It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Here are the headliners. The urgency of being better prepared against terror attacks from North Korea is highlighted once again as Seoul's spy agency reports Pyongyang is focused on various ways to carry out such acts. In part one of the two-day interpellation session at the National Assembly, THAAD and Kaesong took center stage with a clear line drawn between the main rival parties over various related issues. Despite facing some turbulence stirred on by various external factors, Korea continues to maintain its position as a formidable global exporter. The nation moved up to 6th place in a WTO ranking. Our top story this evening, North Korea is revving up preparations for carrying out terror attacks on South Korea, according to a report to the parliament by the country's top spy agency. On this, South Korea's top office once again called on lawmakers to pass related bills on countering terrorism before such provocations from the north actually takes place. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
North Korea is intensifying preparations to carry out various terror attacks on the south. That's what South Korea's spy agency reported at an emergency security meeting with the parliament on Thursday. The possible attacks, which have likely been ordered by North Korea leader Kim Jong-un, could range from cyber and biochemical terror to even abduction of South Korean government officials. On these possibilities, the presidential office of Cheongwade urged for preparations beforehand, saying that it's no use to mend a barn after the horse is stolen.
It's a pity that the National Assembly has yet to pass the counterterrorism bill, which can effectively tackle terror threats from North Korea or other international terrorist groups.
The call follows President Park's remarks to lawmakers during her parliamentary address a couple of days ago.
그 과정에서 북한이 각종 도발로 혼란을 야기하고 남남 갈등을 조장하고 우리의 국론을 분열시키기 위한 선동을 강화할 수도 있습니다. 그럴수록 우리 국민들의 단합과 국회의 단일된 힘이 북한의 의도를 저지할 수 있는 유일한 방법이라고 생각합니다.
With North Korean terror attacks becoming more likely to happen anytime soon, the presidential office called on lawmakers to help establish a systematic and legal ground to guarantee the protection of the people and assets of the South. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
With the new threats coming from Pyongyang, there are fears about the effect on the South Korean people. Kwon So-ah outlines what forms the terrorist acts could take and takes a closer look at whether Seoul is ready to combat them.
Since North Korea's fourth nuclear test in January, South Korea's National Intelligence Service has been watching for signs of impending terror attacks from Pyongyang, including the possibility of cyber attacks. North Korea has a history of hacking into South Korean systems, targeting a media company, a financial institution, and a nuclear power reactor since its third nuclear test in 2013. But on Thursday, lawmakers listed even more possibilities, such as abductions of anti-North Korea activists, defectors, or government officials, or the delivery of threat letters or parcels to media outlets that criticize Pyongyang.
Public facilities and key structures such as subways, shopping malls, and power stations could also become targets.
Related ministries vowed to prepare for any threats from North Korea in all possible forms. Seoul's Defense Minister Han Min-gu said that the annual military drills between Seoul and Washington that kick off in March will be the largest ever, around double the size of last year's.
Our military has sufficient power to customize our strategy based on the South Korea-US joint defense system to deter and respond to any threats.
Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry says the so-called standing structure is in place and ready to protect South Korean nationals abroad in the event of terror attacks.
We have given an order to all of our diplomatic offices to be prepared for terror attacks.
There are concerns that the North's new threats could create uneasiness in South Korea and beyond, as terrorist acts would affect the people in a more direct way than the North's nuclear and missile tests. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Let's talk national defense now. South Korea and the U.S. will conduct the largest joint military drill to date early next month as North Korea keeps ratcheting up tensions on the peninsula. Kim Hyun-bin fills us in on the regularly scheduled combined exercises with a difference.
South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu, speaking in Seoul on Thursday, said this year's Key Resolve and Foal Eagle joint military exercises will start on March 6, will be the largest to date given the current security situation on the Korean peninsula, with more than twice the number of U.S. troops taking part than usual. 15,000 American soldiers will be involved, along with some of the most powerful pieces of hardware in the U.S. military's arsenal, including the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS John C. Stennis and a nuclear submarine. Some 290,000 South Korean troops will also take part in the drills, and both allies have stressed that the joint exercises are purely defensive in nature. A military official says that the drills are aimed at giving a strong warning to Pyongyang, showing that both Seoul and Washington are capable of neutralizing the communist state at any given time. Meanwhile, official talks are underway regarding the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD into South Korea to better counter any possible missile attacks by the north.
Protecting the lives of our citizens from North Korea's nuclear-tipped missiles is our top priority. We will approach this issue and make a decision based on our right of self-defense.
Defense Minister Han said the THAAD system will be able to better protect South Korea. He emphasized that the current ongoing talks will help the allies to find the best locations to place THAAD batteries without affecting the safety of local residents or the surrounding environment. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Let's turn now to a two-day parliamentary interpellation session that got underway today. Lawmakers' questions centered around the recently shut down inter-Korean complex and deployment of a U.S. missile defense system. Shin Se-min fills us in.
Inter-Korean relations and national security took the center stage on the first day of a two-day parliamentary interpellation sessions on Thursday. Lawmakers were divided along partisan lines on both issues. On the government's decision to shut down the Inter-Korean factory park, the ruling Saenuri party sided with the government and said the choice was inevitable. The main opposition, Minju Party of Korea, questioned the validity of the decision. The party also followed up on an earlier claim by the unification minister, asking him whether the government has the evidence that the money made by the North Korean workers at the Inter-Korean factory park was used by the regime for its nuclear and missile development programs.
You have switched your words multiple times. Are there valid documents to back up such claims?
As I've said before, the government understands that there have been occasions when the money was channeled into two offices of the regime to be used for weapons development.
National security was also in focus during the session, including possible deployment of the U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD on the Korean peninsula. The defense minister responded to allegations that the system does not strategically correspond to the threats from the north.
The system is made to shoot down the North Scud missiles. So with it, the ability of the ROK U.S. forces to counter the threats from the north would be enhanced.
On the issue of national security, Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won said the government stands firm on the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula in response to recent policy debates on whether Seoul should have its own nuclear arsenal. The second interpellation session, which focuses on the economy, will take place on Friday. It's expected to revolve around the issues of the country's ambitious reform drives that includes the labor sector. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign ministry says it is too early to reopen talks with North Korea. This comes in response to remarks by China's foreign minister, who on Wednesday advocated for reviving the long-stalled six-party talks instead of pressuring the communist state with sanctions. Kwon Jang-ho brings us the details.
Seoul's foreign ministry has rejected China's calls to reopen the six-party talks in response to North Korea's recent actions. The ministry spokesperson said that North Korea first needs to stop its provocations and show it is serious about denuclearization. He said, in accordance with the landmark September 19th joint statement, establishing a framework for peace on the peninsula could be discussed by the relevant parties, only after the North makes progress towards denuclearization. The joint statement was reached in 2005 at a round of six-party talks where North Korea agreed to abandon its nuclear weapons program in exchange for economic and political aid. But talks stalled in 2008 after the regime carried out its first nuclear weapons test, which it followed with another 3 tests since then. The UN Security Council is currently working on a draft resolution for stronger sanctions on North Korea, but China has already expressed its reservations.
The world's hot-button issues can't be resolved through pressure or sanctions, let alone military means. They will only exacerbate the situation. All parties should consider the resumption of talks while a new UN Security Council resolution is being discussed.
Meanwhile, the White House has reaffirmed that President Obama will sign a North Korean sanctions bill that overwhelmingly passed Congress last week. It's one of the strongest sanctions bills to pass both the House and the Senate, and the first to target North Korea specifically. The White House spokesperson said North Korea will continue to be isolated until it takes steps towards not just the US and South Korea, but also China, with which it has a vital relationship. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
South Korean President Park Geun-hye sat down with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas Thursday morning, where the two leaders vowed to expand bilateral collaboration and exchanges. She pledged to fund $5.5 million in official development assistance, including the Better Life for Girls initiative, which was laid out in her UN speech last year. The initiative aims at improving education and health care for young girls. Seoul will also step up its humanitarian aid to Palestinian refugees. President Park also called for Palestine's support in responding to North Korea's continued threats, including the latest long-range missile launch, with Abbas responding that Palestine is against any act violating international resolutions. Korea has moved up a notch to become the world's 6th largest exporter. It's the country's highest ranking so far, following a general upward trend. But according to our EG1, it's not all the way downhill from here.
Korea was the world's 6th largest exporter last year, moving up a notch from the year before, despite the sluggish global economy and low global oil prices. According to the World Trade Organization on Thursday, Korea's exports amounted to $527 billion last year, putting the country in 6th out of the 71 exporters surveyed. China topped the list with $2.27 trillion, followed by the US with $1.5 trillion and Germany with $1.3 trillion. The report says with the global economic slump and low oil prices, the world's export volume decreased by about 11% last year. But the impact was relatively less severe for Korea, which saw its exports decline 8% last year from 2014, increasing Korea's share of global export volume. Korea has been rising in the WTO's ranking in recent years. In 2008, Korea ranked 12th. It moved up to 9th the following year, and now 7 years later has gone up 6 notches to 6th. But the news isn't all good. Korea has been suffering from sluggish exports for 13 straight months since January of last year, and could continue for a 14th month if the streak continues through this month. That's the longest period of decline since record-keeping began in 1970. Analysts point to the global economic slowdown and oversupply from China as the biggest culprits. And because those problems are not likely to be resolved in the short term, they expect the downward trend to continue for a while. 이지원, Arirang News.
In its plan to step up efforts to prevent a Zika virus outbreak in Korea, the government is going a step further, saying it will work toward finding a cure against that mosquito-borne disease. Kim Ji-yeon brings us the latest.
The Korean government is stepping up efforts to prevent a Zika virus outbreak in the country. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning says it will work towards finding a cure for the Zika virus. It plans to invest more than $2.4 million to hire 3 teams of researchers over the next 3 years. Researchers will be tasked on developing core technologies that can help define the virus's pathogen, as well as a diagnosis kit. They will also aim at predicting the possibilities of a mutation of the virus if it enters the country. The ministry also hopes to collaborate with international networks, such as the Global Research Collaboration for Infectious Disease Preparedness, in order to secure the specimen of the virus directly from infected areas. The plan is part of the government's comprehensive precautionary measures against a possible spread of the Zika virus in Korea, though there have been no confirmed cases of the virus in the country so far. Health authorities say they will conduct a nationwide mosquito control drive for 10 months, starting April this year, and strengthen its monitoring on airplanes, ships, and passengers that depart from infected areas. The Zika virus, which can be transmitted through mosquito bites, is suspected of causing microcephaly among babies. The incubation period for the virus is known to last 2 weeks, but the survival period or the virus's pathogen is currently not yet clearly defined. The World Health Organization said the Zika virus has spread across at least 30 countries and has been linked to thousands of birth defects in Latin America. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Turkey is hit by a second terror attack in a span of 2 months. 28 people have been confirmed dead and over 60 people are injured after a car bomb blew up in the heart of Ankara. A vehicle laden with explosives detonated next to buses carrying military personnel during the evening rush hour near a busy intersection close to the parliament and other government buildings. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, but some security sources said it was the doing of Kurdish militants from the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, while others believe Islamic State militants were responsible. Korea's foreign ministry has denounced the attack, and during a press briefing, spokesperson Cho Jun-hyuk expressed support for the Turkish government's efforts to eradicate terrorism, adding Korea will join international counterterrorism efforts. The ministry is currently trying to determine if there were any Korean nationals among the casualties in Ankara. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.